Log entry: Sentinel-Omega station, deep space sector, the far reach. I am looking out the main observation port at Sirius Prime, or as I have come to call it in my more quiet moments, the Eye of Eternity. It is a massive singularity, a deep black void wrapped in a cloak of screaming, golden light. Sitting here on the very edge of it, where the fabric of reality starts to fray, you begin to realize just how thin the line is between cold science and something much deeper, something ancient and sacred. They sent me out here with a cabin full of sensors and a head full of equations to monitor the event horizon. I was supposed to collect data on gravitational lensing and Hawking radiation, to be the eyes and ears of a committee back on Earth. No, the more I look into that abyss, the less it feels like a physics problem, and the more it feels like an encounter with the divine. Back home, in the bright clinical lights of the laboratories, everything is explained away with numbers and charts. We have this arrogance, thinking that if we can name a thing and measure its mass, we somehow own it or understand its soul. No, out here, in the heavy, absolute silence of the void, those equations feel like a child trying to describe the majesty of the ocean by looking at a single drop of water. There is a weight to this place that is not just gravity. It is a raw, unadulterated power that makes my heart skip a beat every time the station's stabilizers groan against the tidal pull. I have spent countless hours lately thinking about how all of this actually started. I am not just talking about this mission or this station, but the whole grand impossible design of the universe. When you look at the accretion disk of a black hole, your first instinct is to see chaos. You see matter being ripped apart at the atomic level, light being bent until it breaks, and energy levels that would vaporize an entire star system in a heartbeat. But if you look closer, if you really study the patterns, you see a terrifyingly beautiful consistency. You see the way the light spirals in perfect, mathematical curves that follow the golden ratio. It is the same signature you find in the petals of a flower, the shell of a nautilus, or the swirl of a hurricane in the Pacific. It is too precise, too repetitive across millions of light years to be a simple accident of physics. It feels like I am leaning against the glass, my breath fogging the surface, just staring at the brushstrokes of a master artist who decided to use gravity, time, and light as his medium. It is as if I am standing in the most silent cathedral ever built, and the altar is a hole in reality itself, revealing the light that was there before the beginning. The isolation changes a man. Before I left, I was worried about the loneliness. I packed months of music, stacks of books, and old movies just to have something to drown out the quiet. But now, I rarely turn any of it on. The silence of the station has its own weight, its own texture. It is not empty. It is a presence that fills the rooms. I find myself talking to the Creator more than I ever did back on Earth. It is not like the formal prayers I remember from my youth, with bowed heads and whispered scripts. It is more like a conversation between a mechanic and the designer. I will be recalibrating a stubborn sensor or checking the oxygen seals, and I will just look out the window and say, "You really outdid yourself with this one." It feels natural. When you are this close to the edge of existence, the idea that we are just a cosmic fluke feels like the most illogical thing a person could believe. No accident is this beautiful. No accident is this meticulously tuned. I look at my own hands as they move across the control console, and I see the same terrifying complexity in my skin and bone that I see in the swirling gas of the singularity. We are made of the same stardust, and we were both crafted with an incredible, obsessive amount of care. I think about the fine-tuning of the universe often. Scientists talk about the fundamental constants, the strength of gravity, the charge of an electron, the expansion rate of space. If any one of those numbers was different by even a fraction of a percent, the stars would never have formed, and I would not be here to witness them. We live on a knife's edge of possibility. To believe that this is all a coincidence is like believing a billion monkeys hitting keys on a billion typewriters would eventually write the complete works of Shakespeare. It is mathematically possible, I suppose, but it ignores the obvious. There is a mind behind the machine. There is a will that wanted there to be light and life and someone to appreciate it. Out here on the edge of the Eye of Eternity, the that will feels as real as the metal of my ship. I am not just a technician anymore. I am a witness. I am the watchman on the wall, looking out at the glory of a creation that is far too grand for us to ever truly grasp, but just simple enough for us to feel in our souls. I spent most of the morning in the engineering subdeck, recalibrating the magnetic seals on the primary coolant loop. It is a tedious, dirty job, working in cramped spaces where the smell of ozone and recycled air is thick enough to taste. My hands were covered in thermal grease, and as I tightened a stubborn bolt, I found myself just stopping to look at them. I watched the way my knuckles moved, the way the skin stretched and wrinkled over the joints, the incredible precision of my fingers as they manipulated the tools. It hit me then, more powerfully than any scientific paper ever could. I have spent my entire life studying the most advanced machines humanity has ever built. I know every circuit, every fuel line, and every line of code that keeps this station from falling apart. And yet, not a single piece of tech on this ship, not even the quantum computer that calculates our orbit, is even a fraction as sophisticated as a human hand. You cannot tell me that this level of engineering happened by chance. You cannot tell me that billions of years of random atoms bumping into each other in the dark eventually produced a creature that can play a piano, perform surgery, or feel the warmth of a cup of coffee. There is a signature in our biology, a design so deep and so intricate that it feels like a personal message from the architect. If someone stumbled upon the blueprints for this space station, they would never dream of suggesting it just appeared out of a pile of scrap metal. They would see the logic, the intent, the massive amount of thought put into every redundant system. So why do we find it so hard to look at the human eye or the double helix of our DNA and see the same thing? We are built with a level of information processing that makes our best silicon chips look like primitive stone tools. Out here, on the edge of the void, the idea of a blind watchmaker feels like a fairy tale we tell ourselves because the alternative is too overwhelming. The truth is, we are masterpieces. We are the result of an obsessive attention to detail that spans from the largest galaxy down to the smallest protein in our cells. And sitting here surrounded by the cold, unfeeling vacuum, that realization is the only thing that keeps me from feeling truly alone. I am not just a biological accident drifting through space. I am a conscious observer, placed here to witness the glory of a creation that was meant to be seen. The station gave a long, low groan just a moment ago, the hull adjusting to a minor thermal shift. It is a sound I have grown to love. It makes the old girl feel alive. I have started to treat the maintenance of this ship like a form of meditation. Every time I scrub an air filter or check a radiation shield, I feel like I am honoring the design. Because out here, order is life, and chaos is death. If the laws of physics decided to take a day off, if the constants changed by even a hair, I would be gone in an instant. This whole universe is held together by a kind of divine tension, a balance so delicate, it is terrifying to think about. We are floating in a cradle made of gravity and light, protected from the absolute zero of the void by laws we did not write and cannot fully explain. It makes me wonder if the Creator is more like a gardener than an engineer, constantly tending to the laws of reality, making sure the light keeps moving at the right speed and the atoms keep holding their shape. I have been thinking about the concept of purpose lately. The agency back on Earth thinks my purpose is to collect data, to fill hard drives with numbers that will be analyzed by people who will never see what I see. But I think my real purpose is something else entirely. I think I am here to be a bridge between the physical and the spiritual. I am here to look at the eye of eternity and not just see a black hole, but to see a window into the infinite. I think the Creator planted curiosity in our hearts so that we would eventually find our way out here, to the very edge of what is known, just so we could finally see Him clearly. We spend our lives building towers and ships and empires, always reaching for something more, never quite satisfied with what we have on the ground. Maybe that is because we were never meant to be just ground dwellers. We are creatures of the stars, designed to look up and wonder, who made all this, and why do I feel like I belong out there? I checked the status of the oxygen scrubbers before I sat down to record this. They are humming along at 98% efficiency. It is a rhythmic, soothing sound, like the purr of a giant cat. I think about the millions of people back home who wake up every morning and take their first breath without ever thinking about where that air came from or the complex chemistry that allows their lungs to function. We live in a world of miracles that we have labeled as boring because they happen every day. But out here, where every breath has to be manufactured and monitored, nothing is boring. Everything is a gift. The fact that I can sit here, speak these words, and feel the blood pumping through my veins is a miracle of such magnitude that it should make me fall to my knees every hour. We are so busy looking for signs and wonders that we forget we are the sign, we are the wonder. A handful of dust that stood up and started thinking about eternity. If that is not proof of God, I do not know what is. There is something haunting about the way time behaves out here. Back on Earth, we treat time like a constant, a steady river that flows at the same speed for everyone, everywhere. But here, on the doorstep of the eye of eternity, that river turns into a whirlpool. Because of the immense gravity of the singularity, time is stretching. Every hour I spend on the station is a month, maybe even more, for the people back home. I am literally watching the future happen from a distance. It is a concept that used to give me headaches when I studied the theory in school, but living it is different. It is spiritual. It makes me realize that time is not the master of the universe. It is just another tool in the Creator's kit. If I can stand here and see time bend and slow down just because of a concentration of mass, then how easily can the one who made that mass stand outside of time altogether? For him, there is no long ago or yet to come. He sees the first spark of the Big Bang and the final cooling of the last star, as if they were happening in the same breath. To a God who exists outside the dimensions he created, my whole life and the whole history of humanity is just one single beautiful chord in a much longer symphony. I look at the chronometer on my desk, the little digital numbers flickering away, and I feel a strange sense of relief. If time is flexible, then my regrets are flexible too. The mistakes I have made, the people I have hurt, the years I have wasted, they are not just lost to a vanishing past. They are held in the hand of someone for whom the past is still present. It gives me a kind of hope I cannot find in a physics textbook. It means that nothing is ever truly gone. Every moment of love, every act of kindness, every prayer whispered in the dark is preserved in the eternal now of the Creator. Out here, where a second can feel like an eternity and a year can vanish in a blink, you start to understand that our obsession with saving time is a fool's errand. You cannot save it. You can only inhabit it. You can only try to be present in the sliver of reality you have been given, trusting that the rest of the story is being managed by a mind that does not get tired or confused by the clock. Sometimes, when the station is on its night cycle and the lights are dimmed to a soft amber, I sit by the window and try to imagine what it looks like from the outside. A tiny spark of man-made light hanging on the edge of a golden abyss. I wonder if the Creator looks down at this little station with the same curiosity I have. When I look at a microscopic organism under a lens, do I matter to him? In a universe of 100 billion galaxies, each with 100 billion stars, does the heartbeat of one tired engineer on a lonely outpost register at all? Everything in the science points to no. We are smaller than grains of sand on a beach that stretches for infinity, but everything in my soul screams, yes, I flee his attention. I feel it in the way the station holds together against the odds. I feel it in the way a sudden thought of my daughter can bring me to tears and then leave me with a peace I cannot explain. We are not just data points in a cosmic simulation. We are the objects of a profound, relentless affection. We are the reason the stars were lit in the first place, to give us something to wonder about, to give us a path to find our way back to the source. I am starting to hear a new sound in the station's background hum. It is a high-pitched vibration, almost like a distant choir, coming from the communications array. It is probably just solar wind hitting the external antennas, creating a bit of harmonic resonance in the hull. But in the middle of the night, it is easy to imagine it is something else. It sounds like a welcome. It sounds like the universe is singing to itself. And for the first time in my life, I am quiet enough to hear it. I think that is why he put us in such a vast, empty space. He wanted us to get away from the noise. He wanted us to reach a point where we could not rely on our own strength or our own cleverness anymore. Because it is only when we reach the end of ourselves that we finally start to look for him. And once you start looking, you realize he has been standing right behind you the whole time, waiting for you to notice the beauty of the room he built for you. I will check the gravity anchors one last time before I close this log. The readings are steady, the eyes quiet, just a slow, majestic swirl of fire in the dark. I am going to brew one last cup of that bitter coffee and just sit here in the silence for a while. I do not need the radio or the movies tonight. I have the music of the spheres, and I have the company of the architect. That is more than enough for a man like me. I am exactly where I was meant to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. There is no fear here, only wonder, only peace, and the absolute certainty that the light is winning, even here, at the edge of the end. Sentinel-Omega, logging off for Block 1. The watch is stable. The Creator is awake. All is as it should be. Something strange happened during the last shift. I was running a routine sweep of the deep space frequencies, trying to filter out the background radiation from the singularity, when the static changed. It was not the usual hiss of dead stars or the rhythmic pulse of a pulsar. It was textured. I adjusted the gain, leaning closer to the speakers, and for a fleeting second, I heard a voice. It was faint, buried under layers of cosmic interference, but it was unmistakably human. A woman's voice, laughing, followed by the distant sound of a piano. It lasted only a heartbeat before the gravity waves from the eye swallowed it back into the silence. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. Logic tells me it is just a ghost signal, radio waves from Earth that have been bouncing around the galaxy for decades, finally getting caught in the gravitational lens of this black hole and redirected to my antenna. But my soul felt something else. It felt like a greeting. It felt like a reminder that even out here, in this frozen desert of vacuum and fire, I am still part of the human family. I sat there for a long time afterward, just staring at the flickering green line on the oscilloscope. It is haunting to think about. Because of the way time stretches here, that voice could have been recorded 100 years ago, or it could be happening right now, in a different part of the sky. The eye of eternity acts like a giant chaotic library, catching the whispers of the universe and holding them in its golden grip. It made me think about the Creator's memory. If a mindless clump of gravity can catch and preserve a laugh from a century ago, then imagine what the mind that invented gravity can do. Nothing is ever truly lost. Every word we speak, every sigh of exhaustion, every quiet thank you whispered in the dark, it is all being recorded in the fabric of reality. We think our lives are written in water, disappearing as soon as the moment passes. But out here, I see the truth. We are written in light. We are etched into the very foundation of existence. I started digging through the archives, looking for other ghost signals caught by the station's sensors over the years. I found dozens of them. Fragmented prayers in languages that have not been spoken on Earth for centuries. A distress call from a freighter that went missing during the first Martian colonies. A lullaby sung by a father to a child. It is overwhelming, really. Sitting here, I realize that the universe is not just a collection of gas and rock. It is a repository of stories. And the Creator is the one who listens to all of them at once. How can he bear it? The sheer volume of human longing, the mountain of our fears and our hopes. It must be deafening. And yet, when I look out at the singularity, I do not feel a sense of chaos. I feel a sense of profound, patient listening, like a father sitting in the dark, watching his children sleep and listening to their breathing. He is not judging the quality of the signal. He is just glad we are talking. I have been feeling a bit more human today, if that makes sense. I actually took the time to shave and put on a clean flight suit. I even found a small tin of real tea I would been saving for a special occasion. I suppose hearing another human voice, or even a ghost of one, reminded me that I am not just a component of this station. I'm a man. I have a name, a history, and a soul that needs more than just oxygen and calories to survive. I think the Creator wants us to remember our dignity, especially when we are surrounded by things that make us feel small. The vastness of space is not meant to crush us. It is meant to provide a backdrop for the miracle of our existence. The darker the night, the brighter the candle. And here I am, one small flickering candle, keeping watch on the edge of the world. I think he is proud of us for coming this far, for having the courage to build these fragile ships and sail into the deep, looking for the source of the light. The station's internal sensors just picked up a slight increase in the hull temperature. Nothing dangerous, just the eye giving off a bit more thermal energy as it digests its latest meal. I watched the cooling fans spin up, their low whirring sound filling the cabin. It reminded me of the way our own bodies regulate themselves without us ever having to think about it. Our hearts beat, our lungs expand, our cells repair themselves, all according to a set of instructions we did not write. We are such beautifully self-sustaining machines. But more than that, we are recipients of a constant, sustaining grace. Just as this station needs the sun's energy to stay powered, we need that connection to the source to stay whole. I have spent too much of my life trying to be the captain of my own soul, trying to fix everything with my own two hands. But out here, I am learning the art of surrender. I am learning to trust the engineer who built the stars. I'm going to spend the next hour trying to clean up that radio signal. I want to see if I can hear that piano again. It is a strange mission for a high-ranking technician, I know, but it feels like the most important thing I have done in weeks. It is an act of communion. By listening to those old echoes, I am acknowledging the lives of the people who came before me. I am saying, I hear you. You were not alone then, and you are not forgotten now. And maybe, just maybe, someone 1,000 years from now will catch a ghost of my voice drifting through the void and feel the same thing. We are all connected by a golden thread that gravity cannot break and time cannot tarnish. We are the family of God, scattered among the stars, but always, always within earshot of home. I have been hunched over the signal processor for the last 3 hours, my eyes straining against the flicker of the spectral analyzer. There is a specific frequency range, just on the edge of the Hawking radiation band, where the interference from the singularity seems to thin out, acting like a natural amplifier. I kept tuning, twisting the virtual dials with a surgeon's precision, until the chaotic screech of the void suddenly fell away. What replaced it was not just static, it was music. Not the radio hits of my youth, but something ancient, something that felt like it was carved out of the very stone of earth. It was a choir. A deep, resonant swell of human voices singing in a language I could not translate, but whose meaning I felt in the marrow of my bones. It was a hymn. A piece of liturgical music that must have been broadcast into the sky centuries ago, captured by the gravity of the eye, and held in a slow-motion loop for me to find today. Hearing those voices, layered in perfect polyphony, felt like a bucket of cold water to a man dying of thirst. I sat back in my chair, my hands trembling slightly, and let the sound wash over the cabin. It is incredible when you think about it. Music is just mathematics, ratios, frequencies, intervals. It is the same physics that governs the orbits of the planets and the vibration of atoms. But when a human soul applies those numbers, it becomes a bridge to the infinite. Why does a specific arrangement of notes make us feel awe? Why does a minor chord feel like sorrow and a major chord feel like the sun breaking through the clouds? There is no biological necessity for it. A machine does not need to feel beauty to function, but we do. We are built to resonate with the harmony of the universe. It is as if the Creator hummed a melody when He laid the foundations of the world, and we have been spent our entire history trying to catch the tune. I looked out at the glowing disk of the singularity while the choir sang in my ears, and for a moment, the two things merged. The golden fire of the abyss did not look like a threat anymore. It looked like a celebration. I realized that the math I used to keep this station in orbit is the same math used by the composer who wrote that hymn. It is all one language. The stars are singing, the atoms are dancing, and we are the only part of creation that was given a seat in the front row. It is a profound responsibility, is not it, to be the one who notices. I think the Creator enjoys it when we finally get it, when we see the connection between the laws of gravity and the laws of beauty. It is like a father watching his child finally solve a difficult puzzle. You can almost feel the smile behind the silence of the stars. The signal started to drift again, the voices becoming ghostly and thin as the station's orbit shifted. I found myself frantically trying to lock it back in, desperate not to lose that connection. It made me realize how much I have missed the sacred in my life. On Earth, I was always too busy, too many deadlines, too much noise, too much ego. I treated God like a distant relative. I only called when I needed a favor. But here, with the choir of ghosts singing through the static, I feel a deep, aching humility. I am a tiny speck of dust, standing on a tiny piece of metal, listening to a dead choir sing to a living God, and yet I do not feel small in a bad way. I feel small the way a child feels small when they are being held. It is a safe kind of smallness. It is the realization that I do not have to carry the weight of the universe on my shoulders because someone else is already doing it, and he is doing a much better job than I ever could. I think about the people who sang those notes. They are long gone now, turned back into the stardust they came from. But their breath, their intent, their devotion, it is still here. It traveled across the light years, survived the crushing gravity of a black hole, and found its way to a lonely man in a tin can. If that is not a miracle, I do not know what is. It proves that nothing we do in the name of love or worship is ever wasted. It escapes the atmosphere, it escapes the solar system, and it echoes forever in the mind of the one who hears everything. I feel a sudden, overwhelming urge to add my own voice to the mix. Not a song. I was never much of a singer, but a prayer, a simple acknowledgement of the majesty surrounding me. "I see you," I whispered into the empty cabin, and for a second, just a second, the static seemed to pulse in a warm, rhythmic, "I know." I'm going to leave the recorder running on that frequency tonight. I want to see if anything else comes through, maybe a prayer from a different century, or a shout of joy from a distant world. I feel like I have discovered a hidden radio station that only plays the heartbeats of the universe. It has changed the way I look at my monitors. Now, when I see a spike in the radiation levels or a shift in the magnetic field, I do not just see data. I see a part of the conversation. I see the creator moving the pieces on the board, not out of cold logic, but out of a wild, creative passion. He loves this. He loves the swirl of the gas, the flash of the X-rays, and the way the light bends around the dark, and he loves that I'm here to watch it with him. I am sitting in the airlock chamber now, the heavy metallic thud of the outer door sealing shut echoing through my suit. In a few minutes, I will depressurize and step out into the raw, unfiltered presence of the cosmos. I have to replace a damaged sensor cluster on the outer hull, a routine task, but today it feels like a pilgrimage. I am checking the seals on my gloves, watching the pressure gauges flicker as the pumps begin to draw the air out of the room. It is a strange feeling, knowing that in a moment, there will be nothing between me and the eye of eternity, but a few layers of high-tech fabric and a polycarbonate visor. It makes you feel vulnerable, but in a way that is almost beautiful. It is a reminder that we are not meant to be walled off from the universe. We were designed to be part of it, to breathe it in, to let it change us. I looked at my reflection in the visor for a second before I pulled the helmet on. I saw a man who has aged 10 years in the last 2, with lines around the eyes that were not there when I left Earth. But I also saw clarity in those eyes that I never had before. I used to think of space as a vacuum, a word that implies emptiness, a lack of something. But out here, I have realized that space is not empty at all. It is thick with presence. It is the breath of the Creator, held in a state of perfect, frozen anticipation. Every cubic centimeter of this emptiness is vibrating with the laws of physics, with the intent of the one who spoke it into being. We call it a vacuum because we cannot breathe it, but maybe that is just because our lungs are too small. Maybe our souls are the only things big enough to truly inhale the scale of what is out there. The green light on the airlock control panel just started flashing. It is time. I reach for the manual override and pull the lever. The last of the air hisses out, and suddenly, the silence changes. It becomes absolute. You do not hear the silence in space. You feel it. It is a vibration that travels through your bones, a deep, resonant hum that seems to come from the beginning of time itself. I step out onto the hull. my magnetic boots clicking softly against the metal. Above me, or below me, there is no difference here. The eye of eternity is roaring in its silent, golden fury. It is a sight that should be terrifying. It is a graveyard of stars, a place where matter goes to die. But as I stand here, tethered to this tiny tin can, I do not feel fear. I feel a sense of belonging that I cannot find words for. I am working on the sensor cluster now, my movements slow and deliberate. Every turn of the wrench, every connection I snap into place, feels like an act of worship. I think about the millions of people down on that blue marble, who think their lives are small and meaningless. I wish I could show them this. I wish I could let them feel the way the universe cradles us. We are not accidents. We are not just biological machines doomed to rust away in the dark. We are part of a grand, unfolding thought. Every one of us is a necessary note in the song. If I was not here, right now, fixing this sensor, the data would not be collected, the story would not be told, and the universe would be just a little bit emptier. The Creator needs witnesses. He needs someone to say, "I see what you did there, and it is magnificent." I look down at my tether, the thin nylon cord that is the only thing keeping me from drifting away into the abyss. It is a fragile thing, but then I realize that there are other tethers, invisible ones, that are much stronger. There is the tether of gravity that holds this station to the singularity. There is the tether of electromagnetism that holds my atoms together, and there is the tether of love that holds my soul to the source. I am being held by 1,000 different hands, all of them steady, all of them sure. Even if this nylon cord snapped, I would not be lost. I would just be changing my coordinate in a house that has many rooms. It is a liberating thought. It allows me to work with a steady hand, even while a black hole tries to pull the very light out of my eyes. I have finished the repair. The new sensor is pulsing with a clean blue light, sending data back into the station's archives. I linger for a moment, resting my hand on the hull, just watching the way the light of the accretion disk plays across my white sleeves. I feel like a priest standing at an altar. This is the real world. The offices, the traffic, the arguments over money. That is the dream. This, the stars, the fire, the infinite reach of the mind of God. This is the reality. I take a deep breath of the canned metallic air in my suit and whisper a thank you, not for the oxygen, but for the chance to see. For the gift of being a man who can stand on the edge of the world and not be afraid. I am heading back into the airlock now. My hands are cold, and my back aches, but my spirit is soaring. I will repressurize, take off this suit, and go back to being a technician, but I will be different. Every time I step out there, a little bit more of the old me stays behind in the vacuum, and a little bit more of the light comes back inside with me. I'm becoming a creature of two worlds. Sentinel-Omega, logging off for Block 2. The repairs are complete, the signal is clear, and the architect is still at the drawing board, creating something new with every passing second. I cannot wait to see what happens next. I was just finishing my post-EVA report when it was not the usual groan of the hull settling. It was a violent, high-frequency shudder that made the deck plate scream under my feet. The master alarm began at its frantic, rhythmic wailing, a sound that usually makes my blood turn to ice. I scrambled to the main console, my heart hammering against my ribs. The gravitational sensors are off the charts. It seems a massive wave of space-time distortion, a ripple from some cataclysmic event deeper inside the singularity, has just slammed into the station. The eye of eternity is restless today, and we are caught in the wake of its hunger. I can see the structural integrity readings flickering in the red. The magnetic stabilizers are straining at 112% capacity, trying to keep us from being torn apart by the tidal forces. It is a terrifying reminder of just how thin the line is between this little bubble of life and the crushing reality of the abyss. I am fighting the controls, my hands slick with sweat as I try to manually compensate for the torque. Everything is shaking. The monitors, the tools, the photos of my family taped to the bulkhead. It feels like being inside a giant drum that someone is beating with a sledgehammer. In moments like this, all the high-minded philosophy and the quiet prayers feel like They are being put through a furnace. It is easy to talk about trust when the stars are quiet and the coffee is warm. It is a lot harder when the oxygen seals are whistling and the floor is trying to tilt into infinity. I found myself shouting over the roar of the alarms, not even realized I was doing it at first. I was not shouting commands at the computer. I was shouting at the Creator. Not now. I am not ready yet. Keep this ship together. It was not a pretty prayer. It was raw, desperate, and loud. But I think he prefers that kind of honesty over the rehearsed lines anyway. The internal power grid just took a massive hit. Half the lights went dark, leaving the cabin bathed in the eerie, pulsing crimson of the emergency strobes. I can hear the secondary fusion core struggling to stay in phase. If we lose the magnetic bottle, the station becomes a cloud of expanding plasma in less than a second. I am forced to shut down all non-essential systems, including the long-range scanners and the heater. The cold started to creep in almost immediately, a sharp, biting chill that reminds me that we are only ever a few inches away from the absolute zero of the void. I am huddled in my flight jacket, my breath blooming in white clouds in front of the screens. My fingers are becoming stiff, making it harder to flip the breakers. It is a strange thing, watching your own death approach in the form of a falling temperature gauge. You would think there would be more panic, but after the first rush of adrenaline, a weird kind of clarity starts to take over. I looked at the eye through the observation port, and for the first time it looked different. It did not look like an artist's masterpiece anymore. It looked like a mouth. A vast, unthinking maw of physics that does not care about my name, my daughter, or my prayers, and that is where the real battle is. Not with the fusion core, but with the fear that we are truly alone in an old clockwork universe. I had to close my eyes, force myself to breathe. Slow, deliberate breaths of thinning air. I had to remember what I felt yesterday. I had to remind myself that the laws of gravity that are currently trying to kill me are the same laws that allow the stars to shine and the planets to turn. The architect has not left the room. He is just letting the storm blow. Faith is not the absence of the storm. It is the anchor that holds you in the middle of it. I reached out and touched the cold metal of the console, trying to feel the vibration of the ship. "You built this," I whispered, and I was not talking to the engineers back in Seattle. I was talking to the one who built the atoms that make up the metal. I felt a sudden, strange impulse to stop fighting the controls for a second. I just let go of the joysticks and sat there in the red light, letting the station shudder and tilt. It was a moment of total surrender. "If this is where the story ends, then let it be a good ending," I said. And in that moment of letting go, the fear did not disappear, but it changed. It stopped being a weight and became a kind of energy. I realized that even if the hull cracks, I'm not falling into a vacuum. I'm falling into him. And there is nowhere safer to be than in the hands of the one who invented the concept of safety. The vibrations are starting to level off now. The gravitational wave is passing, its peak moving beyond our orbit and back into the dark. The alarms are still screaming, but the structural integrity is holding at 40%. We are battered, we are freezing, and we are half blind, but we are still here. My hands are shaking so hard, I can barely type, but I am laughing. It is a hysterical, joyful sound that echoes in the cramped cabin. I am alive. The station is alive. We survived a brush with the hem of the Creator's garment, and even though it nearly destroyed us, I have never felt more certain that we are being watched over. I will start the reboot sequence for the life support systems now. I have a lot of work to do to get the old girl back in shape.
Reboot sequence confirmed.
But for the first time in my life, I truly
yes.
understand what it means to be held. The emergency lights are still pulsing their rhythmic, crimson warning. Now the station is filled with a silence that is almost heavier than the noise was. A silence broken only by the occasional pop of cooling metal and the ragged sound of my own breathing. I have been crawling through the maintenance conduits for the last hour, flashlight clenched between my teeth, trying to assess the damage to the life support processors. It is a mess. The surge from the gravitational wave fried 3 of the primary logic gates, and the backup relays look like they have been hit by lightning. According to the manual, these components are non-serviceable in the field. They are supposed to be replaced by a specialized team in a dry dock, not patched together by a shivering engineer with a soldering iron and a prayer. But out here, non-serviceable, is a luxury I cannot afford. I have to find a way to make the broken pieces work again. As I worked on the scorched circuitry, scraping away the blackened insulation, I started thinking about the concept of being broken. We spend so much of our lives trying to look perfect, trying to hide our scars and our failures, as if they were something to be ashamed of. We think that if we are not functioning at 100%, we are useless. But looking at these damaged boards, I realized that the light from my torch was reflecting off the solder in a way it never did when the board was new. The damage had created new surfaces, new angles. It reminded me of kintsugi, that ancient Japanese art where they repair broken pottery with gold. The idea is that the piece is more beautiful and more valuable because it was broken and then restored. I think the Creator looks at us the same way. He does not throw us away when we short-circuit. He does not replace us when we fail to meet the specifications. He leans in closer. He picks up the tools and begins the slow, patient work of patching us back together, using His grace as the gold that fills our cracks. I'm bypassing the main logic flow now, jumping the connection from a secondary sensor to the oxygen pump. It is a messy, unauthorized fix, something that would make the designers back on Earth lose their minds, but it works. I heard the faint metallic click of a valve opening, and then the sweet low hum of the air beginning to move again. I leaned my forehead against the cold bulkhead and just closed my eyes for a second. "Thank you," I whispered. It was not just for the air. It was for the realization that creativity is a divine trait. When we find ourselves in a corner, when the rules do not work and the manuals are useless, that is when we are most like Him. We take the chaos and we find a way to bring order back to it. We take the broken things and we find a new purpose for them. We are never more alive than when we are fixing what was lost. The temperature in the cabin is slowly starting to rise, but the frost is still thick on the observation ports. I used my thumb to wipe a small circle in the ice, looking out at the eye of eternity once more. It is calmer now, the golden ribbons of light flowing in a more predictable rhythm. It is strange how a near-death experience changes your relationship with the thing that almost killed you. I do not see a monster anymore. I see force of nature that is just doing what it was designed to do. The black hole is not evil, it is just vast. The danger did not come from a lack of love from the Creator. It came from the fact that I am a finite creature living in an infinite universe, and that is okay. The risk is what makes the life meaningful. If there was no chance of the station breaking, there would be no need for me to be here. There would be no need for courage, no need for faith, and no need for the architect to show his hand in the middle of the storm. I have spent so much of this mission trying to maintain control, trying to stay ahead of the data and the maintenance schedules, but the last few hours have taught me that control is an illusion. We are not in control of anything, not the stars, not the time, not even our next heartbeat. We are just guests here, but we are honored guests. The fact that the station held together, that I found the right wire to jump, that the oxygen is flowing again, it is not just luck, it is a sustained miracle. I am starting to think that the non-serviceable parts of my own life, the old regrets, the missed opportunities, the parts of my soul that feel fried and useless, might be exactly where the Creator wants to do His best work. Maybe the cracks are there, so the gold has a place to go. Maybe I had to get this close to the end, just to see how much of a beginning is still left. I am heading back to the main chair now. My legs are weak, and I can feel a massive headache starting to form from the carbon dioxide buildup, but I have never felt more awake. I have to run a full diagnostic on the navigation computer next, but I am going to take a moment to just sit in the rising warmth. I will listen to the heartbeat of the station, the clicking and whirring of the machine I have brought back to life. It is a good sound. It is the sound of a story that is not over yet. I am a broken man on a broken ship, but we are both still flying, and in the eyes of the one who made us, I think that is more than enough. Sentinel-Omega, logging part 2 of the recovery. The air is back, the light is returning, and the engineer is still on the job. The station is breathing again. The low, steady hum of the life support systems had returned to its normal frequency, and the emergency strobes have been replaced by the soft, familiar amber of the night cycle. I am sitting back in the command chair, exhausted to the point where my bones feel like lead, but my mind is oddly clear. It is that post-adrenaline clarity, the kind you get after you have looked into the eyes of the end and realized you are still standing. I was just about to close the logs for the day when the long-range sensor array, the one I thought was fried beyond repair, suddenly chirped. It was not an alarm, it was a lock-on. A signal was coming through, but not from Earth, and not from the ghost frequencies of the past. It was coming from the direction of the singularity itself, a burst of high-frequency pulses that translated into a visual pattern on my secondary monitor. I leaned forward, squinting at the screen. At first it looked like random noise, but as the computer smoothed out the gravitational interference, a shape began to emerge. It was a geometric lattice, a fractal pattern of light that looked like a cross between a snowflake and a stained glass window. It was beautiful, but that was not the shock. The shock was that the pattern was repeating a sequence I recognized. It was a prime number sequence, followed by the fundamental constants of carbon-based life. It was a message. Or maybe not a message directed at me, but a signature, like a watermark on a piece of fine paper that you only see when you hold it up to the light. I realized then that I was not looking at a transmission from aliens or some lost civilization. I was looking at the source code of the universe, reflected back at me by the extreme physics of the black hole. It felt like the eye of eternity was finally letting me see behind the curtain. For a few seconds, the sheer scale of the design was laid bare. It was not cold, and it was not mechanical. It was vibrant. It was alive, with intelligence. I felt a surge of emotion so strong it caught me off guard, tears tracking through the dust and grease on my face. I realized how much time I had spent trying to prove God's existence through logic and repair manuals, when the proof was literally in the light, hitting my retinas. The universe does not just contain information. The universe is information. It is a spoken word that is still echoing through the dark. And I, a simple man with a wrench and a weary heart, had been invited to listen to the final syllable. I think about the people who say that science and faith are enemies. Sitting here, that idea seems as ridiculous as saying that a poem and the ink used to write it are enemies. The science is the ink, the faith is the poem. One explains the how, and the other explains the why. You need both to understand the book. The gravitational wave that almost killed me was not an act of malice. It was just a page turning in a very large story. And if a page turning can be that powerful, imagine the mind that is writing the sentences. I feel such a profound sense of relief, knowing that the story is so much bigger than my small part in it. It takes the pressure off. I do not have to be the hero who saves the station. I just have to be the man who stays at his post and appreciates the view. I looked at the photo of my daughter again. For the first time, I did not feel that sharp, bitter ache of distance. I felt a connection that the miles could not touch. If the same intelligence that designed the singularity also designed the way she smiles, then she is safe. We are all safe. Even if the station had collapsed, even if I had drifted away into the void, we would still be within the borders of the same house. There is no outside to the Creator's reach. You can go to the edge of a black hole, 100 light years from home, and you are still in his backyard. That realization is the greatest discovery of this entire mission. It is the data point that changes every other calculation. It is the constant that makes the rest of the equations make sense. I'm going to turn off the monitors now and just sit in the dark for a while. The eye is glowing out there, a silent guardian of the deep. I feel like I have been through a fire, and the man who walked into it is not the same man who came out. I am humbler, I am more tired, but I am infinitely more at peace. I have seen the signature in the light, I have heard the heartbeat in the static, and I have learned that the only thing more powerful than the gravity of a black hole is the love that holds it in place. I will sleep well tonight, probably for the first time since I arrived at this outpost. I will sleep because I know the engineer is still awake, and he has got the watch. Sentinel-Omega, logging off for Block 3. The repairs are holding. The signal is understood, and the Creator is, as always, magnificent. Good night, Earth. Good night, whoever is listening. We are never as alone as we think we are. I woke up this morning to a sound I have not. My head was still heavy from the lack of sleep and the lingering cold of the station, but that sound acted like a shot of pure adrenaline. I stumbled to the console, my magnetic boots clumping loudly in the quiet cabin. It was a message from Central Command. They have seen the data from the gravitational wave, and they have seen the repairs I managed to pull off. They are calling it a miracle of improvisation. They told me that a release ship is already being prepped for launch, and that my tour of duty is officially coming to an end. In 6 months, I will be handing over the keys to the old girl and heading back toward that little blue dot in the distance. I sat there in the silence, the message flickering on the screen, and I did not know whether to laugh or cry. I am going home. I am actually going to see the grass and feel the rain again. But as I sat there looking at the blinking cursor, a strange thought hit me. I am not the same man who left that planet. That guy was a technician who looked at the world through a lens of nuts, bolts, and binary code. He thought he was coming out here to study a dead star, never realizing he was actually being sent to find his own soul. If I go back now, I am carrying a weight of knowledge that I cannot just put into a report. How do I tell the guys in the lab that the universe has a heartbeat? How do I explain to my daughter that her father saw the handwriting of the Creator in the light of a black hole? I feel like I have been living in a monastery at the edge of the world, and now I have to go back down into the noise of the marketplace. It is a daunting prospect. I am afraid that the peace I have found out here might evaporate the moment I step back into a world of schedules and screens. I spent the afternoon doing a full inventory of the station's supplies. It is a habit now, a way of staying grounded. As I counted the ration packs and checked the sealants, I realized that I have started to love this place. This cold-crowned, vibrating tube of metal has become a sanctuary. It is where I learned that I was not the center of the universe, and ironically, that is exactly what made me feel important. On Earth, we spend so much time trying to be somebody, trying to build our own little kingdoms. But out here, in the shadow of the eye of eternity, you realize that being nobody is actually a promotion. It means you are finally small enough to see how big everything else is. It is like the Creator had to pull me 100 light years away from everything I knew, just so I would be quiet enough to hear him whisper. I went to the observation port and looked out at the stars one more time. They do not look like distant points of light anymore. They look like eyes, not judgmental eyes, but curious, loving ones. It is like the whole cosmos is leaning in, watching this tiny human drama unfold. I think about the relief pilot who will take my place. I wonder if he will be as scared as I was. I wonder if he will spend his first month trying to drown out the silence with movies and music. I want to leave him a note, something better than just a manual on how to flush the coolant lines. I want to tell him, do not be afraid of the quiet. The quiet is where the truth lives. And do not be afraid of the eye. It is not a hole in the universe. It is a doorway. I want him to know that he is not just a janitor for a telescope. He is a witness to the greatest show in existence. I started a fresh pot of coffee, the real stuff, from the emergency stash. I figured if I am going home, I might as well celebrate. As the smell filled the cabin, I felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the rescue, but for the entire journey. Even the terror of the gravitational wave, even the bone-chilling cold and the loneliness, it was all worth it. It was a price I would gladly pay 1,000 times over to have seen what I have seen. I think the Creator likes it when we are brave. I think he designed the universe to be dangerous and difficult, specifically so we would have to grow to survive it. We were not meant to stay on a cradle forever. We were meant to climb out, to skin our knees, to get lost, and eventually to find our way back to the Father, with stories to tell. I am going to start the data transfer to Earth now. It will take weeks to send everything, but the most important part is not in the numbers. It is in these logs. It is the record of a man who went looking for gravity and found grace. I hope whoever listens to this on the other end understands that I am not crazy. I am just awake. For the first time in my life, I am truly awake. I will keep the station running, keep the beacon flashing, and keep my eyes on the light until the relief ship arrives. And when I finally step onto that transport, I will not be looking back with sadness. I will be looking forward with a heart that is finally at peace with the infinite. Sentinel-Omega, standing by.
Station heartbeat
The
steady.
long watch is nearly over, but the light is just beginning.
Captain logging.
I've spent the last few hours cleaning the main flight deck. It might sound trivial, but there is something deeply satisfying about polishing the brass fittings and wiping down the displays until they gleam like new. I want this place to be perfect for the man or woman who takes over after I am gone. I am not just leaving behind a station. I am leaving a home. I have started putting together a special folder in the main computer. I have labeled it the soul of the machine. It is not filled with technical specs or emergency codes. It is filled with my observations about the beauty of this place. I want my successor to know that when the station groans at 3 a.m., it is not something to fear. It is the ship telling you it is holding firm. I want them to know that the silence is not empty and the eye of eternity is not a monster. I am leaving them a legacy of peace, a roadmap for how to survive the isolation without losing your mind, or better yet, how to find your spirit in the middle of it. I found myself thinking about what it actually means to be a human being in a place like this. Back on Earth, we define ourselves by our jobs, our bank accounts, or the cars we drive. But out here, all of that is stripped away. You are just a soul in a suit. And strangely, that is when you become most valuable. I have realized that the human soul is like a prism. On its own, it is just a clear piece of glass. But when the light of the Creator hits it, the raw, unfiltered light of existence, it breaks into 1,000 different colors. Each of us reflects a different part of his character. Some of us reflect his creativity, some his resilience, some his capacity for love. My legacy for the next pilot is to tell them to let that light shine through. Do not try to be a machine, be a prism. Let the vastness of space show you colors in yourself that you never knew were there. That is the real reason we are sent out here, to be transformed by the view. I have also been writing down some thoughts about the eternity we all carry inside us. It is a strange thing to ponder when you are looking at a black hole that swallows time, but I have never felt more immortal than I do right now. Physics tells us that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It only changes form. If that is true for a simple photon, how much more true must it be for the consciousness that perceives the photon? We are not just temporary ripples in a quantum field. We are intentional. We are meant to last. I want the next person on this watch to understand that their work here matters eternally. Every bolt they tighten and every prayer they utter is part of a permanent record. We are building something together across generations, a bridge of understanding between humanity and the infinite. We are the explorers of God's backyard, and that is a job that never truly ends. I took a break to look at a small plant I have managed to keep alive in the hydroponics bay, a simple sprig of lavender. It is a tiny, fragile thing, sitting in a plastic pot surrounded by trillions of miles of lethal radiation, and yet it grows. It reaches for the artificial light with a stubborn, quiet persistence. It does not know it is in space. It does not know about singularities or event horizons. It just knows its nature, which is to grow and to offer its scent to the air. I think we are like that lavender. We find ourselves in environments that seem hostile or impossible, but our nature is to reach for the light. My message to the next watchman is this: keep reaching. No matter how dark it gets or how small you feel, your job is to grow. Your job is to be the life in the middle of the void. The Creator did not put us here to be crushed. He put us here to prove that life is more powerful than the vacuum. I am feeling a sense of excitement I have not felt since I was a kid on Christmas morning. It is not just the thought of going home. It is the thought of what I am bringing back with me. I am bringing back a heart that is no longer afraid of the dark. I am bringing back a mind that sees miracles in the mundane. I want to tell everyone I meet that they do not have to travel 100 light years to find God. He is in the way the air feels in your lungs. He is in the rhythm of your heart. He is in the very fact that there is something instead of nothing. I will keep preparing the station, keep making it ready for the next traveler. It is a labor of love now, not a chore. I am the steward of a sacred place, and I am going to make sure the lanterns are lit. and the fire is burning bright for whoever comes next. Sentinel-Omega is more than a station, it is a witness. And I am proud to be the one who stood the watch. This is it, my final log entry before the relief. I have spent the last few hours just sitting in the observation dome, watching the eye of eternity swirl in its magnificent, terrifying glory. It is strange. For months I thought of this place as a prison, a cold exile from everything I loved. But as I prepare to leave, I realize that I have never felt more free. I came here looking for answers in the physics of a dead star, but I found them in the silence of my own heart. I found a God who does not hide behind equations, but reveals himself through them. I found a peace that does not depend on the stability of a hull plate or the pressure in an oxygen tank. And now, I am ready to take that peace back with me. I am going to walk on the grass. I am going to hold my daughter's hand, and I am going to tell anyone who will listen that the universe is not an empty, cold machine. It is a home, built with an infinite amount of love. To those of you back on Earth who are watching this, maybe months or years from now, do not let the scale of the world frighten you. We look at the stars and we feel small, but our smallness is exactly what makes our existence so incredible. The same hand that carved the singularity also carved the fingerprints on your hand. You are not a mistake. You are not a cosmic accident. You are a thought of the Creator, and He has not forgotten you for a single second. Whether you are in a crowded city or sitting alone in a room, the light is there. You do not need a multi-billion-dollar space station to find the infinite. You just need to be still enough to listen. The signal is always broadcasting. The Creator is always speaking. We just have to be willing to tune our hearts to the right frequency. I am packing my small bag now. There is not much to take. A few photos, lucky wrench, and the journals I have filled with my thoughts, but I am leaving a part of myself behind. I am leaving my fear in the vacuum, and I am leaving my doubt in the event horizon. I'm heading back to Earth to be a father, to be a neighbor, and to be a witness to the things I have seen. But I know, deep down, that my story with the stars is not over. You cannot see the face of the infinite and then be content to look at the ground forever. The earth is beautiful, and it is where my roots are, but my soul has tasted the deep water of the cosmos. I will rest, I will share what I have learned, and then I know I will look up at the night sky and hear the call again, because the mission is not just about one station or one black hole. The mission is about the journey toward the light, and there is so much more to see. There are nebulae where stars are being born, there are galaxies dancing in the dark, and there are corners of creation where the laws of physics are just beginning to be written. I have only seen the front porch of the house of God, and I am already planning my next trip into the interior. I am going home to say my halos, but in my heart, I am already saying, see you soon to the void. I will be back. I will be back because the Creator is there, and I want to see what else He has been working on while I was away. I want to see the next chapter. The docking lights on the release ship are visible now, a tiny flickering star that is getting brighter with every second. The old girl is ready to receive her new guest. I have left the coffee pot clean, the sensors aligned, and the journals unlocked. My work here is done, but the watch continues. I'm stepping away from the controls with a smile on my face and a deep, unshakable gratitude in my soul. Thank you for the danger. Thank you for the silence. Thank you for the light. It has been the greatest honor of my life to stand at the edge of eternity and realize that I was never alone for a single moment. This is Captain Elias Thorne, Sentinel-Omega Station. Signing off for now. I am heading home to my daughter, and then I am heading back to the stars. The light is still burning, the hand is still steady, and the universe is more beautiful than I ever dared to imagine. I will see you out there in the deep.